Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of Savage Sword of Conan number 4. And I just want to say there's nothing wrong with this issue. I know that's a weird way to start a review, but we've been having some printing problems where not enough black ink was getting on the page, and there was streaking and fading and things like that. But I gotta say, reading this through the first time, I didn't notice any problems. Now, taking some photos for this video, I did notice some minor flaws here and there in the printing, but honestly, it's so unnoticeable that you would have to be looking for it to see it. To me, this printed fine. If all of them print this well, I'm a happy man. And just as a reminder, Titan Comics puts out 2 Conan comics. One is Conan the Barbarian, our monthly color comic, and the other is Savage Sword of Conan, which is a magazine. It's usually 64 pages. This issue is 78 pages. It's black and white, and it comes out on a bi-monthly basis. Both these titles are mature readers, meaning they have more graphic violence and nudity than you would see in a normal comic book. You're going to get a lot more graphic violence and nudity in Conan the Barbarian than you are going to get in Savage Sword, but you can see that in either of these titles. So this is a very unusual issue of Savage Sword. This is even more like a Barbarian box of chocolates than normal because you have 6 different stories by 6 different creative teams, most of which I'm unfamiliar with. So we're just going to take everything rapid fire here, starting with the cover, which I really love. It's Conan in the dark, and it's basically just kind of establishing a mood for the issue, and I think it does it well. It's just a striking image, and we get to see the barbarian in black pants. There's not that many covers like that, so that's cool. They give us a full version of the map this issue, and it prints quite well. And if you have the digital edition, zoom in and take in all the little details they put in there. And if you don't, go to Kindle and download the sample of the issue and zoom in on that map, because this is the coolest map ever for Conan comics, and I love it. There are a lot of pinups in this issue, like this one that runs with Jim Zub's introduction, but I'm okay with that. There's still a small amount of pinups compared to the amount of story we get in this issue. Most of them are used to give each artist in this issue one more chance to draw the character that they were working on in a really cool, visually spectacular way, and all of them are really, really cool looking. And so this issue acts as a prologue to the Battle for the Blackstone miniseries that's coming next week, and it summarizes the Blackstone saga that's been running in Conan the Barbarian. It runs through the first year of the series, issues 1 through 12, and this sums it up. And this is going to be a series of stories in this issue showing different characters encountering the Blackstone and the evil that accompanies it in different eras. So first up is a story with Conan, and I love the artwork here. I hope this is not the only time this artist gets to draw Conan. The pencils are spectacular, and I think the grayscale is also very impressive. Look at the clouds, look at the lightning. This didn't just print well, this printed impressively. There's a few instances where the coloring got a little bit too dark, but that was just kind of a choice on the artist's part. That's a very common technique to color shadows in dark instead of using black inks. But overall, very impressive art. The story by Jim Zub doesn't really do much. It's just yet another cryptic tease for Battle for the Blackstone #1, which is fine. Next up is A Tale of the Puritan Adventurer Solomon Kane by Patch Zurcher. He does both the writing and the artwork, and he already did a serialized Solomon Kane story for the first 3 issues. And this is a self-contained story where Solomon Kane is a mercenary in a war, but of course he ends up running across supernatural evil, as always. And it is beautifully drawn. The story is the most satisfying in here, and this is my absolute MVP for the issue. I love Patch Zurcher on Solomon Kane, and I certainly hope this is not his last story with that character. All right, next up is Bressa, who is a new female Pictish warrior who was introduced in the Conan the Barbarian title by Titan Comics. And this is by Jim Zub, and This is the only story in here that actually orients the reader to who the character is. All the other stories, you know very little about the character, but here we get a recap of what happened in Conan the Barbarian. We tell what happened to her after we saw her last, why she disappeared, and we also get into her backstory and tell a little bit of her background. But all this is just a setup for where the character will start out at in the battle for the Black Stone. The artwork here is quite good, and I love how the grayscale here looks very similar to techniques that were used back on the old Savage Sword of Conan back at Marvel. Next up are Conrad and Kirwan, who I guess are researchers into the occult. There's not a whole lot of information given about them, but basically they're investigating these ruins and, of course, are going to run into some supernatural evil. The artwork is good. The story is fine. Don't have a whole lot to say about it. The biggest artistic surprise to me was seeing Dark Agnes done in a manga style for her story, but it makes sense, right? If you think about what the most successful comics in the world are, they're black and white manga done in Japan. So if you're doing a black and white magazine, why not put that in there? And it's a very detailed manga style, but it still captures that kind of kinetic energy and emotion you see in that kind of artwork. And it looks really great and works very well in this story. The plot is not the best in the world. I'm a little fuzzy about why she ends up in this house filled with supernatural evil, but I don't think the story is trying to take itself too seriously. There's actually a few parts in here that made me laugh out loud, but it doesn't take away from the horror of it, the fact that there is a little bit of humor in there. I think it works well. The story is decent enough, and it does have some clever dialogue. Last up is El Barak, written by industry legend Ron Mars, with photorealistic artwork by Mike Perkins, which looks absolutely spectacular. It's basically just one big fight scene between El Barak and these guys who are chasing this child that he's trying to protect. But it's a decent enough story with some really great artwork, and it was a very, very good artistic treat. And it ends with this pinup of all the characters together, which is really spectacular. And I honestly will say that I really didn't learn a whole lot about any of these characters with the exception of Brissa, but you don't need to know about these characters for these stories to work. To me, this issue is just an artistic showcase showing you all these different artists doing Robert E. Howard characters. Story-wise, to me, this is the most run-of-the-mill, I've seen it before issue that Titan Comics has put out of Conan. And I think that's probably intentional because they're paying tribute to Robert E. Howard's horror stuff. And I think they do a decent enough job. It's just that nowadays we've seen so many Lovecraft-inspired horror stories, especially if you read Mike Mignola comics, that a lot of this stuff just feels very, very familiar, but it's still good to see all these Robert E. Howard characters in comic book form. And just a word of caution, I didn't see any spine damage on the issues that my comic shop had from the weight of the paper for an extra-sized issue, but when I was handling the issue for this review and taking pictures, it did end up ripping the cover down here in the bottom corner, so just be careful, handle it gently. This is a lot of weight for any cover to hold. All right, next up is the miniseries Conan Battle of the Black Stone. First issue ships next week, and it's just going to be a miniseries. You're not going to have to buy a bunch of tie-ins. You can just read that miniseries. And I still don't know what it'll be about. I hope that they can put some twists on the Lovecraftian horror that, Howard tended to do. And I think we already see one of the twists in the cover for the second issue, which has Conan going at it with Solomon Kane. And just these two together is more than enough to sell me on this mini-series. It will be interesting to see why they're fighting. I mean, Conan is a bloodthirsty hedonist, and Solomon Kane is a God-fearing Puritan. Why would these two characters not get along? Anyway, like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.